All right, everybody. Greetings, world. This is Kiana. I go by Key, and to some, you may know me as Master Key. And today, I am here to do something I've never done before. That is to discuss the biopic of Michael Jackson. Now, I went to go see it on Friday when it came out, but I've stewed on it for a few days to see what did I get from this movie. It was very, it was a beautiful movie as far as glamorizing the story, but there are a lot of themes that I, as a millennial, uh, witness, especially or experience for the first time, being that I didn't quite grow up on Michael Jackson, and I'm familiar with the Scream with uh, Janet Jackson. That was something that was big when I was growing up, and the "You Rock My World" video. That's the Michael Jackson that I grew up on. So to be able to look back and see his story, and I also did not watch the American Dream coming up. Probably was outside a lot. So it was very interesting to experience a story of that nature. And I think one of the most important things that stood out to me was the cost of a neglected childhood. Right? Michael, he was very impactful. He had a strong aura that was undeniable. To this day, he still lives in his music as he intended and through people. But he showed us the importance of following through on a vision. So that's the main reason I'm here today, to follow through on my vision, right? I don't know you, you don't know me, but I just want to talk about what I got from the biopic. And whoever finds this video, you're supposed to be here. Let me know what you think, and there's more to come if you want me to watch other things and analyze it, right? But he showed the importance of following through on the vision. So something that he did that the biopic showed is that he gave himself affirmations, right? He knew how to talk to himself. You are confident. You are strong. You are powerful. And he also knew how to command that power. He knew how to stand on business while using that power. But I think what I admired the most, not just from him, but from his family outside of Joseph, was he remained kind through all of it, right? That's what they portrayed. He was very kind. Even when he was being a shark at the table, he said what needed to be said. He didn't have to be like hyper aggressive, but he meant business. And that was important. Like, yeah, did he have to sacrifice school? Yeah, his mom made that a priority, but eventually the touring and the money took over. So he didn't have any school. But what he did was he listened and he learned and he applied it and he became the king of pop. The second thing that I learned from Michael Jackson biopic is the importance of separating from the familiar from the future, right? A lot of times we are familiar with people, familiar with histories, familiar with past, and things that we are comfortable with. But at some point, growth does require for us to go ahead and separate from the familiar. So yes, was he the breadwinner for the family, essentially the workhorse? He was. But he had his own identity outside of the family needs that he needed to tend to for his soul and for his purpose. And he struggled with that thing, but he understood that there needed to be separation. So he didn't do it immediately, but he did it eventually, and I'll get into that a little further. He showed me the importance of the price you pay when you stay in seasons that are in the past, and how it costs more every time it is put away, but the lesson is eventually earned. I'm sorry, the lesson is eventually learned. So, what does that mean, Key? Well, in his situation, um, his biggest op to me was Joe Jackson, his father, right? And his struggles with his own identity. But the main thing was Joe Jackson. Joe Jackson was the patriarch, the head of the family. He whatever he said went, and nobody really stood up to challenge him. So much so, that Michael started his solo career, and he ended up, doing his off the wall thriller. He saw great success with that. But Joe saw an opportunity for the family to make more money, or thought that there should be a way for the family to make more money. And so he calls a meeting while Michael was back home for a little while. And essentially, Michael tried to stand up, right? He tried to be like, I need to think about it, Joe. And Joe totally like disregarded Michael's thinking about it. And they ended up going on tour, right? Was it the Victory Tour? I think it was the Victory Tour. Now, the movie portrayed it that when they were on the Victory Tour, it was like some type of Pepsi commercial being, made, and basically Michael Jackson did not even want to do it. Did not stand on what he didn't want to do, but eventually went to this thing for the family, for the familiar. And what did it cost him? He already struggled with his appearance, right? It cost him his hair. His hair got burnt off, and or burnt his scalp. He suffered second and third degree burns, had to go through a whole rehabilitation process. He struggled internally, but that fire, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended, right? That fire was enough for him to put a fire under his behind so that he could start standing up for himself and his future, right? So yes, did it take all of that? Probably not. If he would have just told him from the beginning and meant it from the beginning without feeling bad or anybody coercing him to do differently. But when Michael finally made that decision to stand up to Joe, it was after the pain of, we could just say the pain of him being burnt or embarrassed or whatever that was, costed him so much that he had to finally say no. And that was Michael's story. But a lot of time in our stories, we have those things, those habits, those people that we are still trying to hold on to and drag for whatever reasons, whatever stories we give ourselves. We try to drag that stuff into our future, and it's sometimes there is no room for it. And so we go through unfortunate things, sometimes a loss of a job, loss of a loved one, whatever it is, to learn just that lesson. You may not learn it right away, but you eventually learn it, and it's better to make those hard decisions earlier so it doesn't cost so much later. All right, the next thing that I learned from the Michael Jackson movie is that the inner child that is neglected can bleed into adulthood. Now, something that kind of concerned me, and it was not to call him weird, but it hurt me to see that someone so famous and so loved on the stage spent a lot of times, like the deepest conversations in that movie, like when you hear him talking and expressing his feelings. I'm like, wow, he finally found somebody. It was either a monkey or a llama or a giraffe that he was talking to, and it's like, do they understand his language? Probably not. But like, where were the people? How could he mean so much to so many people and be so lonely internally, or in his everyday life, so much so that he wanted to be surrounded by animals, right? Like that deeply hurt, because it's just, it's obvious, but it's a strange reality to live in, and I can only imagine the internal turmoil that he lived with every day, right? Which brings me to my next point. His family, they seem to respect his growth. So his brothers, like, nobody seemed to be like not wanting to deal with Michael on his own. But when it came to his evolution and individuality, they seem to support it, right? But Joe, in this biopic, I want to be clear. I know a lot of y'all watch everything Michael Jackson. I'm not a lot of y'all. I only watched this biopic. This is my first thing, that I really delve into for the Michael Jackson story. But Joe, he didn't respect Michael's individuality or evolution, and he kept calling him back to that child, even though he was a man, right? And it just, to me, like, right, many people will say, oh, well, Joe was manipulating Michael, and that's what a victim mindset would definitely say. They would say that Joe manipulated Michael. And while there is some degree of truth to that, I don't want to, like, knock it, right? The truth is, accountability says that, hey, Michael answered. Michael was a grown man. He was still answering to where he kept being called back to. Sometimes we have to stop answering to the things that no longer serve us and be okay with ignoring it, right? Big nose. Big nose is another thing that Joe called Michael, right? He called him that, and that's something that they showed him calling him. Joe called Michael Big Nose when he was a child, right? Well, Michael grew older, started acquiring funds, so Michael goes to a doctor for his nose to be symmetrical, right? Um, and I would say my eyes saw that Michael lived in shame for the way he was born, his features, right? He went to go change it, and I think the most ironic part of him changing it, like Joe was the one that called him Big Nose, right? Michael goes to change that big nose when he gets grown. Comes back to the house with all of the patches and stuff on his face. Joe sees it. Michael says, he lies in shame, and he says, he changed, well, he didn't say he changed anything. He told them that it was a sinus issue instead of addressing the safe self-hate with the person that actually like might have caused the initial reason for him not even liking his nose or feeling like his nose was big to begin with. Sometimes our internal dialogue is of other people. We don't even realize how deep it is, or even if we know that it came from that place, it's hard to tell the person that it came from, that hey, you called me this, I'm now changing this thing. And that was really interesting for me. So it looked to me like some form of self-hate, but I don't know, right? I'm not him, but I do pray that his soul is at peace, right? So one thing I did admire, he knew he was a black man. He identified as a black man, but he wanted human influence. He didn't want to be categorized as a black man. He wanted to influence humans. So that was something that was very powerful because he went after it. He put the team together to do that, and I admired that about the movie. Now once Michael dealt with his demons or his toxic family ways, he finally broke free and he was able to live the way in his truth and his independence and his influence, which gave him joy, right? He got to take on the persona that he wished to take on. He got to do the things he wanted to do, and he was no longer indebted to the family structure. So once he did confront that past, he was able to move forward fluidly from what the movie portrayed, right? Now, he did choose for a while the comfortable image, right? But that comfort, and he kept it until it destroyed him permanently, right? So, something else I wanted to talk about is Joe. Joe did not respect Michael's boundaries. And eventually, it cost Joe everything because while he did like benefit for 30, 40 years or however long this reign lasted of being abusive and manipulative and toxic and just controlling, eventually it cost him everything. He could no longer have rights and access and all of this. It was just cut. And I'm really thankful for that happening. But I just have a few questions for anybody that's made it this long. My question is, was Michael strategic or cowardly for faxing his dad or having someone else to fax his dad that letter? We all know it ended up in him having to confront his dad eventually, but would you say that was strategic or cowardly? Something else I wanted to address was the people I believe were unsung heroes within this movie. The first one was the bodyguard. The bodyguard was great person of comfort for Michael when, they needed to get the business done and just for support mentally in certain phases to give him that extra push and courage. Another person that I thought was an unsung hero was Barry Gordon. Barry Gordon was influential. He was patient with Michael. He showed him the business, and he seemed to give him a fatherly love that he might not have gotten with Joe, and it wasn't spoken on, but it seemed like there was some resentment from Joe. Instead of Joe changing to be a better father, he would resent him and eventually try to take the family away from what Barry Gordon helped them to build eventually. And my last unsung hero was Janet Jackson for declining. When I was walking out of the movie theater, I was talking to this older couple, and they were like, I wonder why, Janet didn't want to be portrayed. I did realize that Rebe Jackson also wasn't portrayed. It was only LaToya. That's the only sister I remember seeing in the biopic. Nobody's talking about Rebe. But I saw you, Miss Rebe. And Janet declined. Now, I'm just asking, right? I am the oldest sibling of about 9 people, and like, if something's being done for one of my siblings, why would I not want to be portrayed? Well, you want to look at maybe the truth in the matter, or I don't know. What do you think, right? And then the last thing is, what ways? This is something I asked myself. This is what made me make this video. What ways are you living like Michael, right? Is there anything that you can change for a better future? And whatever that thing is, I just want to encourage you to go ahead and do it. That is what I did today. And I hope that you enjoyed this review of the, I guess, psychological things that I realized from the Michael Jackson movie that had me going, Now, what are some things that I missed? And again, who are your unsung heroes? Let me know in the comments. And guys, have a great day. Thank you.